I have the absolute privilege of welcoming you to the last session of 2025 Nano Summit. Indeed, this session is very special to me, very special to all of us here at MIT.nano. It is a session we called Honoring Visionaries in Nanoscience and Nanotechnology. So this afternoon, we celebrate vision, leadership, qualities that have shaped MIT's role in advancing nanoscience and nanotechnology for years and years. And that vision and leadership indeed continues through what we are doing at MIT.nano. You have just seen the leaders of tomorrow present many great advancements, and indeed just 0.5% of what actually is happening inside our facility. So a visionary who has been central to the story of MIT is MIT's 17th president, Rafael Reif. And I have a distinct honor of welcoming him to stage in a moment. I just want to say a couple of words before I do so, because I believe last time he introduced me, he said a couple of words as well, and I tremendously appreciated it. Over the course of his career at MIT, Rafael's impact on both MIT and the field of science, technology, and in particular nanoscience, has been profound. As a faculty member, he saw the importance of creating shared facilities that could bring researchers together. And of course, the very next thing he did is he became the director of Microsystems Technology Labs, the predecessor to the present MIT.nano, an organization that defined the path that we are now following. He worked to expand those shared fabrication spaces and build communities, because indeed it's those communities that build tomorrow, that human friction of interaction that places like the fab, like characterization, like the immersion lab of Nano can indeed enable. As president of MIT, he championed bold investments in research infrastructure by making MIT.nano possible, ensuring MIT could remain at the forefront of nanoscience discovery. Nationally, President Reif extended Vannevar Bush's vision for the endless frontier, advanced through academic discovery. His tireless efforts shaped the continued national commitment to science and technology advancements. And indeed, for years to come, we are changed because of what President Reif has done for all of us. Because of his leadership here on campus and his belief in the power of shared discovery, MIT.nano, the innovation powerhouse that he stood up, now supports more than 1,500 users across more than 50 departments. I mentioned this at the beginning. That's at this point, after 7 years of existence, over 20% of MIT research groups touch MIT.nano to accomplish their needs. So I cannot think of a better messenger to tell us about the legacies that he built upon, shaped by Vannevar Bush, and then by a remarkable MIT alum, Robert Bob Noyce, whose story you're about to hear. President Reif, please join me on stage.
Vladimir, thank you for such a very generous introduction. I guess if I want you to tone it down, I'll take care of it at my next introduction of you. You have heard today mostly about the future and the future you're building. My few minutes of remark is about the past and where we come from, at least at MIT. So I'm extremely honored and delighted, truly, to join you at this Nano Summit, but also importantly, to announce that we are dedicating the clean room at MIT.nano in honor of Robert Noyce, of the MIT class of 1953. As most of you know, I'm sure, Bob is the person who put the silicon in Silicon Valley by inventing the first monolithic integrated circuit based on silicon. In fact, for many years during his lifetime, he was referred to as the mayor of Silicon Valley. More than anyone else, it was Bob Noyce who sparked the microelectronics revolution. His legacy, however, is about much more than technological brilliance, which he certainly was in leaps and bounds. He co-founded Fairchild Semiconductor and then Intel, where he served as its first CEO, and where he oversaw the invention and commercialization of the microprocessor. Bob Noyce set new standards for entrepreneurship and entrepreneurial leadership in tech and in the Valley as well. And it was a template for generations to follow, including that of many MIT alumni. He was a living legend. One day, shortly after I became MTL director, I was informed that Bob Noyce was visiting MIT that day and had requested to meet with me. I was wearing my regular professorial outfit, an open collar shirt and a sweater. I decided that I could not meet such a living legend dressed so casually. So I asked my assistant to run to the MIT Coop to find me a tie. Any tie, ASAP. I was desperate not to appear disrespectful. She came back right on time. And then Bob Noyce showed up at my office without a tie. Of course he did, because another of his innovations was an unpretentious, informal management style that has characterized tech ever since. In fact, in his honor, I'm not wearing a tie today. I also want to take this unique opportunity to thank Ray Stata of the classes of 1957 and 1958, whose generosity has allowed MIT to honor Bob Noyce in such a fitting way. Ray, do you mind raising your hand? Ray, again, I told you that my remarks were about history. Ray was a peer of Bob Noyce in co-founding Analog Devices in Cambridge in 1965 and growing it into a global leader in signal processing and processing devices. Ray Stata was for the East Coast what Bob Noyce was for the West Coast. Ray also was and is the driving force behind nanoscale research at MIT. The whole idea of what eventually became the Microsystems Technology Laboratories at MIT and MIT's first classroom facilities in Building 39 was pushed by Ray. In order to will MTL into being, he had numerous meetings with the MIT administration at the time to convince them to make such a bold step. And of course, Analog Devices was the first company to commit financial support to MTL. Ray Stata also deserves credit for physically bringing together electrical engineering and computer science at MIT, which were on opposite sides of the street, until he gave us Building 12, the Ray and Maria Stata Center for Computer, Information, and Intelligence Sciences. Moreover, Ray Stata gave MIT the first gift that allowed us to launch MIT.nano. And Ray has been a driving force in my own career. When I joined MIT in 1980, it was as the first holder of the Analog Devices Career Development Professorship, which Ray established. In 2022, I had the great honor of receiving an award named for him from the Massachusetts High Technology Council. And today, I'm the Ray and Maria Stata Professor of Electrical Engineering and Computer Science. When Ray pushes, something good always happens. So I want to also thank him for insisting over decades that MIT remain at the leading edge in the semiconductor space, even when the country itself thought it had left advanced chip fabrication far behind. When MTL was conceived, just as I was arriving at MIT, it was seen as utterly necessary. The US still manufactured over half of the world's semiconductors, and MIT needed to educate experts for that industry. The challenge, of course, was that semiconductor laboratories were, and still are, extremely expensive. So it could only make sense in a university if it was going to be used by a large number of faculty research groups. MTL's pioneering faculty solved that challenge, in part by creating a tremendously attractive, collaborative, and collegial culture, which included weekly micro-lunches that still exist today, that faculty wanted to join and be part of. In 1990, I became the second director of MTL and had the privilege of serving in that role for 9 years. But as the new millennium began, MTL facilities were becoming outdated in equipment, in space, and some would argue, in concept. In 1985, Japan had surpassed the US in global semiconductor market share. In 1987, another contemporary of Ray Stata and Bob Noyce, Maurice Chang, of the MIT class of 1952 and 53, had established Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company, or TSMC, reshaping the industry with a foundry model that separated manufacturing and design. And by the year 2000, US fabs were producing less than 20% of the world's semiconductor chips. Chip manufacturing had become very capital intensive. The thinking in industry at that time was that if Asia wanted to do chip manufacturing, let Asia do it. The US would concentrate on where the real value added was, on chip design. The US also largely stopped investing in educating students in the semiconductor space. This included even universities such as UC Berkeley and Stanford, at the heart of Silicon Valley. In that era, I would regularly hear in Silicon Valley that software eats hardware for lunch. I did not subscribe to that claim. Of course, software and digital technologies were, are, and will continue to be critical to the economy, locally and globally. But software runs on hardware. Advances in one enable and stimulate advances in the other. Advances in chip technology and chip manufacturing make possible advances in chip design, which in turn make possible advances in artificial intelligence, and vice versa. And I knew that the emphasizing hardware was going to come back to haunt the United States. So when I became provost at MIT in 2005, I had the opportunity to do something about it. Fortunately, the deans of engineering and science at MIT were in agreement, and with their support, MIT made the bold decision to double down on semiconductor research and education by creating MIT.nano, just as everyone else was moving away. Then came the supply chain shortages of the pandemic, and the US government suddenly realized that there was a national security issue when virtually all of the world's most advanced chips are manufactured in Asia. When then Secretary of Commerce Gina Raimondo came to tour MIT.nano in 2022, right before the Chips and Science Act passed, she said to me, referring to MIT.nano, the country needs 10 of these. Clearly, the future will rely on both algorithms and semiconductor chips. I believe that MIT needed to be at the leading edge of algorithms as well, which is how the Schwarzman College of Computing, this building, came into being. And with MIT.nano, MIT now has vastly improved facilities and equipment for the hardware end of the spectrum. Moreover, MIT.nano expanded the welcome offered by what was always a supremely welcoming community. It has allowed even more faculty, students, and entrepreneurs across the institute, as well as industry leaders and government entities, to solve major research challenges in MIT.nano. In 2022, it was a distinct pleasure to name the home of MIT.nano after Lisa Su, CEO and chair of AMD, another semiconductor industry leader educated at MIT. Lisa, by the way, is MIT through and through. She has not one, but 3 degrees from MIT, a bachelor's, a master's, and a PhD. Finally, I want to finish by thanking all of you for being so patient to listen to so much ancient history. However, MIT at the nanoscale is a story of leadership that continues to this day. From Bob Noyce to Ray Stata to Morris Chang in the early days of the industry to Lisa Su today, MIT has educated a large number of remarkable leaders in the semiconductor space. Now with the Robert Noyce Clean Room, this remarkable MIT community is ready to continue to shape the future. With the next generation of nano discoveries, you heard many of those today, and the next generation of nano leaders who themselves will become living legends in their future. Thank you so much for including me in such an important day, and thank you for allowing me to listen to your spectacular presentations today. Thank you.